Welcome back to another episode of Offbeat Adventures. We're standing here once again on the grade of the former Canadian Northern Railway and later Canadian National Railways Dorion and then subsequently Kinghorn Subdivision. We are just to the west of the community of Jellicoe here in the municipality of Greenstone, Ontario. We're just about 3 miles or so to the west of Jellicoe. We're here on the grade. We're just beside what is known as Rolland Lake Road. Rolland Lake is just right over there through the trees. And so what we're going to be doing today is we are going to be working our way right from Rolland Lake Road here all the way to another road, which is Blackwater Road, which is about just over 4.5 miles to the west. So we're picking up right where we left off on a previous hike. This is actually a redo. So we did this hike a couple of years ago. So in early June of 2021. It is the third week in May of 2023. It's a beautiful day today. It's actually quite warm. My phone's telling me that it was 16 and it feels like 18. However, we did have a not so nice April, and so you can still see some vestiges of snow, and you'll be seeing that along the way as we move our way along. Now, we got something right off the hop here as we get started. So you'll notice these spots here, and you'll be seeing a bunch of them as we kind of move our way along. And so you can see here, there's the bottom end of a telegraph pole. We'll see lots of telegraph poles here and in through here. It looks like they dug gravel out of here, which they did. So it was interesting, when I did this hike the last time, I was commenting about how it looked like they took stuff out of here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you. So in between that hike 2 years ago and now, I actually found a document that was published in 1917. And I'm guessing the survey work was done from 1916, and they basically went through this area all the way from Long Lac to Orient Bay. And in the process, they came through here, and they do comment that in the area around Jellicoe, because we are passing along the Blackwater River Valley, and we're going to be seeing the Blackwater River in a little bit, basically how they dug gravel. So I'm going to show you that document. Okay, so let's get rolling. So right over here somewhere, there was supposed to have been a flanger sign for the crossing that was back there, and it's gone. I'm guessing somebody took it because it is not here. It was here a couple years ago, just lying down beside the grade. It was the only flanger sign in the area. As you're going to see, all the flanger signs for the bridges and the crossings, they're either gone or cut off. So it is very unfortunate. That's maybe I'll flash up a little piece of video of that. So here's our first little item of interest, and so here you can see the flanger sign for the crossing. Tell the operator to pull up the blade on the plow. Okay, so let's get rolling here. So while we got a second, we can start our usual history lesson. And so this line was built by Canadian Northern Railway between 1911 and 1914. It was going to be one of the final pieces in Canadian Northern's transcontinental ambitions. The Canadian Northern Company got its start. You're going to see lots of ties as we kind of go through parts of the grade here. There's another one right there. I guess they had trouble pulling them up. There's another one right there. So the Canadian Northern Company got its start in Manitoba way back in 1896 by buying up some lines and some charters and things like that. Their first big project was the construction of a line between the then city of Port Arthur, which is now Thunder Bay, and Winnipeg, and that line was completed in 1902. And then subsequent to that, they began building lines all throughout the prairies. Canadian Northern sort of became synonymous, particularly with the northern part of the prairies with all their lines and branches and things like that. Here you can see a whole bunch of ties. I guess they had, again, they must have had trouble pulling them out of here. And then around that time, Canadian Northern began building north from Toronto as well, eventually reaching up into the Sudbury area. Now, it was around that time that Canadian Northern realized that in order for their company to be successful long term, they would have to have a transcontinental connection. Now, unfortunately, Canadian Northern did not want to build some of the pieces of that transcontinental line. So, for example, in the mountains of British Columbia, which would be very difficult. And then this section, because it was going to be very difficult to build and therefore very expensive. And so they looked at all kinds of different options to sort of circumvent that, including a running rights agreement with Canadian Pacific. Unfortunately, none of that panned out, and Canadian Northern was forced to build. And again, construction lasted between 1911 and 1914. So on New Year's Day 1914, the last spike was driven. Okay, let's hold up here for a second because we actually have a point of interest. So somewhere here is supposed to be milepost 53. And so that is the mileage that is measured on the Kinghorn line, which we're going to explain in a second here, which is the last sort of iteration of this line. Unfortunately, milepost 53 is not here. It's weird because 51 is there, 52 is there, 53 is not here, 54, 55, 56, 57, 58 I think is there. So it's just weird that this one is the odd one out of the process. Okay, so as I was saying, the last spike on this line was driven on New Year's Day 1914, and then the line opened for traffic in 1915. Now, around the time that the line opened for traffic, the Canadian Northern Company started to run into some issues, and a lot of that revolved around some of the problems that were coming up as a result of World War I, and a lot of issues as a result of completing the transcontinental line. You know, some of the cost overruns and things. For example, building this section. There's another piece of tie there. And so within a couple of years, by 1917, the Canadian Northern Company was bankrupt and had to be taken over by the Canadian government. And then a year later, right at the end of 1918, so here's some more ties, the Canadian Northern Company was merged or amalgamated, or whatever descriptor that you want to use, with a bunch of other Canadian government owned bankrupt lines called the Canadian Government Railways. And that merger produced Canadian National Railways. Sorry. Okay. So anyway, Canadian National Railways. And the nationalization process was complete by 1923. Now, speaking of 1923, right around the time that nationalization happened, you actually started seeing a lot of activity in this area around Jellicoe. A lot of what I'm guessing are wood cutting operations. So here you can see there's a tie still in place. There was one back there. So on maps, on timetables, you'll actually see a place marked on here just for 1 year, 1919, right? So just that's when nationalization happened. So at milepost 3.4, so that's the original mileage, there was a spur connected to the west end known as Kennedy. And you can actually see something right here. So you can actually see what looks like this remains of this spur right here. Now, I'm guessing it's logging because that's what was sort of happening. So there was one that was just on the other side of Rolland Lake Road where we started our little adventure here. And so you can see here, that's probably ballast that's flicked off of here, but again, you can basically see this, right? You can see there's a ditch on this side, there's a ditch on this side, and essentially you can see this pretty well-defined spur here. It doesn't say how long the spur is, it just says that there's a spur. So I'll flash that up on the screen for you. Okay, so as I was saying, the nationalization process was complete in 1923. So in 1923, the name of this line changed. So here you can see where this spur kind of either starts or ends. The name of this line changed. It was originally the Nippigan Subdivision of Canadian Northern Railway. Here's another tie. And then it became the Dorion Subdivision of Canadian National Railways. And so it remained as the Dorion Subdivision until 1960. You can see some more snow here. And in 1960s, there was a big reorganization with this company. And so what happened was, there's another tie. The Dorion Subdivision was merged with the more easterly Kinghorn Subdivision. So the Kinghorn ran from Rolland Lake to Jellicoe, which again is just a few miles that way to the east. And then more ties here. The Dorion Subdivision ran from Jellicoe to Port Arthur. So those two were merged. And then the whole line was called the Kinghorn Subdivision. And the Kinghorn continued to run until 2005. More ties here. When CN decided to discontinue service on the line, and beginning in 2008 they began pulling up the rails, and that process was complete by 2010. So here we're coming aside this little lake here. Here again you can see, looks like where they've dug gravel again. So we're in this river valley, the Blackwater River Valley. Here you can see the beaver's been hard at work chopping some poplars down. Okay, so we got, I think our first stop is coming up just up here. Yet again, more ties. There's just like, they're everywhere. Again, I guess they had a problem pulling up the ties. So there's remnants of them all over the place. Okay, so we got a 2-for-1 here. So right here, right underneath that tree, we're not going to go look at it, but basically there's a telegraph pole right in there. And then here, what we have is we have a old style segmented concrete culvert. You can see part of it right there, and then obviously the other side is here. So I guess what happens is then in the springtime, basically the water flows. Probably at some point these two little ponds, these two little lakes were connected, and then obviously when they built the railway grade, it sort of bisected them, and so they put the culvert in to allow the two pieces to join. So we're gonna go take a look at that, but what we're gonna do is, you'll notice we had such a bad April. We had a lot of snow, probably more snow in April than January, February, March put together. And then it was cold and the snow didn't want to go away. So that's why you're still seeing patches of snow. The leaves are just starting to come out. Literally, the snow was still here 2 weeks ago. And so what we're going to do is we're going to reuse the footage that we shot 2 years ago, because it's basically all dry and we can go down there and take a look at it. Okay, so we've made our way down below the level of the grade. We are on the south side, and you can see we're basically, like, there's a little lake over there, and there's a little lake over there, and this is basically like a little waterway. I'm guessing at one point there was more water in here. And so basically what we have here is we have a very, very large concrete culvert. It's probably about a 4-foot diameter one. You can see there's a bit of deterioration here on the outside part of it. It's dry in here. I'm not good with heights, or sorry, I'm not good with enclosed spaces, but we're gonna walk our way through. I gotta make sure I duck here. Okay, Now that we're at the other side, this makes me feel a whole heck of a lot better. I do not like that claustrophobic feeling. Okay, so we're obviously here on the north side now. So again, that little lake is just over there, or maybe like a pond. So you can see the culvert on this side. Some deterioration of the flange here, but other than that, it seems like it's in pretty good shape. Looks like there's a little bit of rock wall. So probably at some point, these two bodies of water, these two ponds or these two lakes had quite a bit more water flowing between them. It has been rather dry, so that might kind of influence things. But you can see there's quite a bit of moss and stuff growing in there, so maybe this culvert hasn't seen a lot of water in recent years. Okay, so we're gonna hop up on the grade and we're just gonna continue pushing our way to the west here.